See, this is Fox News.
Lawrence County depends on WDXE News, on the air since 1951. This is The Legend. 105.3, 95.3, WDXE.
Yes, that's us, and it's time for estate and planning with the state plan staying.
And bulletproof estate planning.
Pierchoski Law.
Those are the words you were looking for.
Yeah, that's what sometimes I lose my words.
Yeah.
Sometimes I lose my word. But yeah, Friday has rolled around, and of course, Stan Pierchoski is here. And it's been a whole week, bud.
Yeah.
A whole week.
Well, you're tired because you've been Jeremiahing
This morning. I thought that was an interesting word.
It was, yeah.
Jeremiah. I like it. May run into that a lot these days.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, I'm doing fine. Thank you for asking.
Yes.
It's been a hot week. We had, over at the theater, I deal with the theater next to my office in Pulaski Square, the Star Theater. We had a kind of a red letter week. We got some grant money to, if anybody's been to our theater, you notice that right in the middle of the audience and most people's field of view is a giant pole that holds the place up. Okay.
Yes, I remember that.
And it's been there since forever. I mean, it's an old riveted together I-beam, and it's been there forever. It's always been a problem. And anyway, we got some grant money to remove that thing, and we did. And yesterday it left. It came out.
Wow.
It came out of its spot because they built the thing that holds it up, and then they took the pole out. We made a big deal of it. We had the newspaper was there, and we filmed it. And,
wow!
Yeah, it was a big deal.
Is there plans for the pole to do something with it?
Actually, we had thought about two different things. One, we were thinking about sticking it out and making it like a thermometer for the restoration process of the whole theater and opera house.
Yeah.
But we decided we got it right out in front of the theater. We're going to turn it sideways and make a bench out of it. And it's going to be like same. It's going to be the same thermometer concept, but kind of like a progress bar, as it goes from left to right.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, just something to bring awareness. So
that's a good idea.
But it's mammoth. It's huge. It's old, and it looks great. We have some time-lapse photography of them working on it. They've been working on it for about, I'm going to say close to 2 months, because they've had to fabricate a bunch of pieces, and then they bring them in, and they actually raise them, which was fun to watch, into place. And then welded everything into place. It was a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that is. I mean, I'm sure it was a support beam.
Oh, yeah. It was a lot of support. It was a huge beam.
Yeah.
Huge.
So it had to be supported elsewise.
Just getting it in there. They started at 5 o'clock on like Wednesday morning, and had to get a permit and block off the street, and the police were blocking the street off for them to put this thing on skates and roll it in. They had to get it over the curb. I mean, it weighed 3,000 pounds. There's two beams. They each weigh 3,000 pounds. I mean,
wow.
Huge. But anyway, red letter day for the theater to finally get rid of that pole.
Well, we were talking about community theater work here on an earlier program this week, as a matter of fact, and the community involvement in having those theaters like that. I know that there's, of course, the Pulaski. We have one here, and I think they have one up in Mount Pleasant. As
most communities have.
It's a good idea. It's such a good thing.
We have I told you we're doing Grease with the twist, where the cast is over 30, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, we had auditions last week, and we had a third audition Saturday, and we managed to get enough to cast the show. So her rehearsal starts Tuesday, and off we go. So.
That's good.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
That's good. Well, I'm looking forward to it. We're going to try to make that.
Yeah. And you have no bad seats in the house now.
That's right.
Because there's nothing behind the pole.
Nobody's going to be behind the pole. That's right.
I said I want to watch a show sitting in a seat right behind where the pole used to be, and I'm just going to sit there and enjoy it.
Good deal.
Anyway, back to more estate planning kind of things for this hour.
Yeah.
I want to talk. I got my seminar coming up, September the 14th. Now that's just 2 weeks from tomorrow.
It is.
And it's going to be over in Pulaski at the American Legion. And, the reason we're not having it to theaters is because we got a couple of things in rapid production that it's not available that Saturday, but it is a Saturday for that, September 14th. That seminar starts at 10 o'clock in the morning. We call it Wills, Trusts, and the Nursing Home. And that's the sort of stuff we talk about. So if you've got questions about this stuff, and a lot of people do, lots of people do. I know that because we get calls every day, all day. People drop in. Come to the seminar. I think you'll be very happy with it. Okay, it's not a loosey-goosey hour where we feed you a meal and it's a sales pitch or something. It is. We'll have some light refreshments there, but it is jam-packed from the minute we start to the minute we quit. My presentation is about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes long, and it is just nonstop fact and information. And usually I've got everybody's attention because the people that are there are interested in this thing and they want to hear. And you will hear things you've never heard before. And if you just have an open mind, just because you haven't heard it before, it doesn't mean it isn't so. Kind of like my father-in-law. It's like, well, I've never heard. I don't see how that can be done. I've never heard about that. Like, oh, because you haven't heard it means it just can't possibly be done, right?
There you go. That's right.
So that's not a good attitude to have. Be a little open-minded. But you have heard other things all your life for all the time you've been interested in this concept. And we're going to open up the door to other possibilities because there are other options, lots of them.
Lots of options.
That's what that's what we're going to talk about the seminar. Like I said, it's 10 o'clock at the American Legion. I think the actual address is 425 Legion Drive, but you can practically see the American Legion from the square. And I think if you just put in your GPS, American Legion Pulaski, I'm sure
you should find it. Yeah,
take it there.
Absolutely.
So, if you want to get RSVP'd for that, call the office, 931-363-7222, and talk to one of the girls and give them a head count and just show up. You might get a phone call reminder the day before, but other than that, if we answer a lot of questions for people with those things. So, speaking of answering questions for people on this concept, this is an interactive show. You're free to call in with a question or an experience or a thought that you want to share. Let's at least make it germane to estate planning.
That's right.
I mean, you want to call in and talk about the election, that's probably not the hour to do that, but I'm sure there's plenty of them. So just give us a call at 931-766-9393.
Absolutely.
766-9393. We'll field your question.
We will watch for the calls.
I want to start off with a concept that has come up a couple of times in the last week or two, and it's always been a little bit of a confusing topic for people. And it's what we call, some people I've heard it called many different names, but the correct name is a life estate. So we're going to talk about real estate, which is near and dear to your heart.
Yes.
And we're going to talk, when you have real estate, you have all kind of interests in real estate. I remember back in law school, we talked about real property. We talked about all real property has what we call a bundle of rights. There's quite a few rights, which is, the right to own it, the right to lease it, the right to use it. You have the present interest, the future interest, all kind of rights associated with land. And, when you either own them all or you part with some of them. Usually when you part with some of the bundles of rights, you do so for monetary gain, like a profit, like leasing it out or renting it, stuff like that. But there's a thing called a life estate. And I hear people call it a lifetime dowry, I can't even think of all the names, but usually people come in and say something and I'll sort of ask them a question or two, and then I finally realize they're talking about a life estate. Yeah. And let me just talk about what it is, and then we'll talk about how we deal with it, because it can be an issue when we deal with long-term care. Yeah. Because it's an asset, and it's an interest in land that has value. Yeah. So,
want to take a phone call?
Sure. Give me a chance to take a coffee swap.
Hey, good morning. You're on WDXE with us.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Just wanted to maybe get some advice on real estate investment.
Well, we're here with the state planning with Stan Pierchoski. We might be able to address it. I don't know. We'll see.
Oh, excellent. Are we live right now?
Yes, we're live right now.
Okay, so do you want me to hold on, or should I tell you my situation?
Well, I tell you, let me do this.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, go right ahead.
If it's real estate investment, can you hear me?
Yeah, he can.
If it's real estate investment, I'm not the best person to talk about it. If you have real estate and we're wanting to protect it against things like long-term care and make sure it gets wealth transfer to subsequent generations and stuff, then I am the person to ask the question. But as far as investing in it and being profitable, that's a little out of my lane. So
I can tell you though, if you want to talk specific investment, call my office. And I'll take advantage of that.
Hey, this is my show.
762-5816, and I'll be there after 9 o'clock. How about that?
Hello?
Yes, are you there?
No, yeah. No, I'm not interested in that. I just wanted to ask some general questions.
Okay.
Hey, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I'm 44. I'm going to be 44 in 2 months. I have a slight addiction problem, but I've got about $20,000 in savings. If listen, you're not a real estate expert, but if I wanted to invest in let's say a double wide, how would you suggest I go about that? Also, I have my credit score is 720.
Well, that is a question for a different situation we have here. So do call my office, and I'll try to help you, okay? 762-5816. 762.
What's the number?
762-5816.
Hold on, let me 742. What's that again?
762-5816.
Hold on. 767.
Gosh. I'm gonna have to give up on him.
Okay.
I don't know what he's doing. But,
Well, I mean, if you're going to invest in a double wide, the extent of my knowledge of that is you go buy one. Now, I don't know if you're a good one or a bad one, stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, how to spend your money on real estate. I'm talking about real estate you have and want to hang on to.
This is a different category.
And a valid question, just wrong person to
Right,
answer it. And
right.
I know my limitations, so. So I'm talking about it. We're talking about this life estate. Let me talk about what it really is, and where it's an old common law form of action, and it kind of works like this. People will say, "I want to deed my property to my kids now, inter vivos, meaning during life, before you know what I mean." So I want to give it to them now. Now, when you deed it to your kids, and you can do that, nothing's stopping you. But when you do deed it to your kids, ownership is complete, and they own it. Now, the theory is, I want to deed it to them, but I still want to live here. But the problem is, if you deed it to them, I mean, legally, the very next day, they can turn around and give you the boot because they are the owners.
Right.
Okay. And now, I'm not saying your kids will do that, but people become concerned, and they want to make sure that it's okay for them to live there. So, this old common law action is called a life estate. So, what you do is you deed it to them. So you have given the property away to them, but you are reserving a life estate. Now, what does that mean when I say reserve a life estate? Well, we go back to this bundle of rights. And one of the rights you have in land is what's called the present possessory interest, which means you own it now and you possess it. Okay,
Yes.
like your house.
Yes.
You own your house and you live in it.
Yes.
You possess it. You also own the future interest, meaning 10 years from now, if you want to sell it or rent it or something, you own that interest now. It's called the future interest, or it's called the
Right.
remainder, or the remainderment. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to sever those two, and you're going to say, okay, I'm going to deed the property to you now. Now, you're giving it away now,
Yes.
but you are holding on to the present possessory interest, that's a life estate, for the rest of your life. Or, it really, I won't confuse it, but a life estate can really be based on anybody's life. I mean, you could say a life estate based on the life of the King of England or something, but it's typically the person, okay?
Yes.
Or a couple, and like the second to pass away.
Yes.
And so so that's the history behind it. That's what it is. Now, the life estate, you can't boot that person off. Now, even if the person that owns the property is called the remainderment.
Yes.
Called the remainder interest.
Yes.
The person has a life estate, it has the present possessory interest. Now, it's interesting to note that life estate runs with the land, which means if you sell it to your kids and you have a life estate, 5 years later, your kids decide to sell it to some third party.
Yes.
That concerns mom and dad because they're thinking, oh, shoot, am I going to have that? It does not. It runs with the land. The new buyer, it has to honor the life estate. Okay?
That's true.
And, it doesn't matter who owns it. It could be some corporation just salivating like a Pavlov dog and chomping at the bit to industrialize where you live, right?
Yes, yes.
They can't do anything until the expiration of the life estate. That runs with the land. It doesn't run with the owner. I mean, if you ran it with the owner, it'd be a foolish thing to do. But it goes on, has to be honored. Now, life estate expires at death, or sometimes language says it'll expire if you're not actually possessing it. So if you move off to Oregon or something,
Yes.
you don't want something to terminate that life estate because you're not using it.
Yes.
At least that's my advice. But so that's what a life estate is. Now,
Can that be terminated?
it terminates with death.
Yes.
And it actually expires worthless at death. It's an asset that has value, but it expires worthless at death. Now, that's a good point because that's sort of where I'm leading into.
Okay.
You can terminate it. Some people can terminate it. They'll say, like, I leave it, let my spouse live in the house. I own the house, but I'm let my spouse live in it after my death.
Right.
But if he gets remarried or she gets remarried, that terminates the life estate.
Yeah.
Or if he no longer resides there, it terminates the life estate. I mean, you can put conditions on it, and it's anything you want to do. So when you say, can it terminate, the answer is yes, but you've got to be express about it in the deed that reserves it and put the terms and conditions in there. So, and that, because it's a gift that you're getting. You can conditionalize it.
Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at though is there language or a document that has to be executed in order to terminate the life estate?
Well, you got the conditions in there, and the deed is where it's born, it's where it's created, and where it terminates.
Yeah. Okay.
In other words, you don't actually necessarily have to do it at the termination. Like death is the most common termination.
Yeah.
And I have seen deeds where they have a life estate in it, and I would research it and find out that person passed away 5 years ago. And now when we deed the property, say, to one of our trusts, we put in there that so-and-so, having died on such and such a date, terminated the life estate that was granted in the prior deed before.
Okay.
So stuff like that.
Sure.
Or you could say, having relocated. you know.
Sure.
So it is. There is a formal document that expresses that.
Okay.
Now, here's it's a life estate is an okay. I mean, I get the concept, and a lot of people do it, and people have been doing it for centuries, really.
Yeah.
Now, we kind of fast forward to 2024, and we're dealing with this long-term care issue that you hear me talk about a lot.
Yes.
Okay. It is an issue when that comes up, and here's why. A lot of people think if I save his life, if I give my house to my kids, and reserve a life estate, and if I do that and 5 years go by, then I've saved the house for them. Okay?
Yes.
Not exactly. Okay, it's a misunderstanding. So let me tell you how the life estate works as far as TennCare is concerned, or wherever you are in long-term care. When you have a deed that says, I'm giving this house to my children, but I'm reserving a life estate. Okay.
Yeah.
At that moment, TennCare will go into there's a table called the life estate tables. It's actually in Title 42 of the United States Code, which is Social Security.
Okay.
Called life estate tables. And they will go down to your age. Okay, if you're however old, you'll go down the column to your age.
Right.
And they'll go across the table. And in the table are two columns. One is called the remainder, and one is called the life estate. And in each of those columns is a fraction. And on every age you look at, those two add up to 1. Okay?
Sure.
So you get to your age, let's say it's 55, and you go across. It will typically be about the remainder portion is 0.6 or 60%, and the life estate portion is about usually 40%, in that ballpark.
Okay.
So what that means is, you hear me talk a lot about long-term care and giving stuff away and have to suffer a penalty, right? Well, what you're giving away when you do life estate is you're giving away the remainder interest. What you're giving to the kids. Now, they have the deed. You have you don't have title ownership anymore. You have retained this right. Okay.
Yes.
Now, there's value on that right. And according to those tables, the value is 40% of whatever the fair market value of the property was on that day. Okay. Now, if you look at the tables and further, the tables go down with age. So if you do this at 55, if you look at the tables, they go to like 109, okay, in age. I mean, they really get up there a ways. It's like, and as they go down, up in age, the life estate becomes a smaller and smaller fraction.
Yes.
It technically expires worthless at death, but during life, it always has some value, but it reduces. Now, when you apply for TennCare, your life estate in the state of Tennessee, now this is one of the unfortunate things about Tennessee because other states treat it completely different. Your life estate is a countable asset. No matter what age it is or whatever percentage it is, it's a countable asset. Now, a countable asset can disqualify you if it's over $2,000, right? Now, let's think about how to get rid of a life estate. I mean, let's get rid of it.
Yes.
If you just terminate it or give it away, that's a gift. You have to deal with that, right?
Yes.
So we don't want to do that. You couldn't sell it. If you go in the open market and you come to me and say, hey, you want to buy my life estate? I'm going to say, well, gee, I don't know. How long are you going to live? And say, well, I don't know. But so how do we work out a fair market price if I don't know where you're going to live? I mean, I don't know how long you're going to live.
Right.
It could, if you die in a week, it'd be a bargain. I mean, if you die in a week, I would have got.
Yeah, you got ripped off.
Right, ripped off. But if otherwise, I could get a bargain. You just don't know, right?
Right.
So it's impossible to sell in the open market. And the only person that would buy a life estate would be the remainderman because they have the future interest. And by buying the life estate, they now have all the interest. Okay, so they'd be the only ones. But if you sell it to the remainderman, now you have that cash for what it's worth. So you have that asset. But you can deal with the asset as money easier than you can deal with it as a life estate. Life estate's a hard thing to get rid of when we're trying to plan for eligibility of TennCare.
Interesting.
Okay? Now, it kind of gets a little worse because we are in such a. I told you that as your age goes up, your interest in it goes down.
Mm-hmm.
But there's kind of a phenomenon going on these days, and that is the value of the land is going up so much more rapidly. I'm doing a case right now where 10 years ago we had the life estate, and it had a value.
Yes.
And now, if we had to deal with care, we go to the table at the age now and the fair market value now and apply the percentages that it has gone up after 10 years. It's gone up because the cost of the land has gone up so much faster than it's going down by age.
Yes, I see what you mean.
The asset has increased for crying out loud, which is unheard of with a life estate. So anyway, but those are the numbers, and so that's something we have to deal with. So when if you're thinking to yourself, I'm worried about going to the nursing home, or my wife is headed to the nursing home. I need to hurry up and deed this property to my kids. That's usually not a good idea because you're gifting it away, and it's certainly going to be within the 5-year period because you're doing it because somebody's in the nursing home, right?
Sure.
And if you decide you're going to give it away but reserve the life estate, you aren't giving it all away when you do that. You are reserving a pretty big chunk of it as the life estate, and that is a countable asset that we're going to have to deal with, and it's not an easy one to deal with.
No,
it's not an easy one to deal with. Sometimes we may just have to give it away and live with the penalty. It just depends. It just depends. They're all different. But I think people have a misunderstanding of how that works. Not the 10-care. I don't know that many people have much thought about that. But
Right.
what the life estate is and what you're giving away and what you're keeping. Because, I had a client, bless her heart, she said, gave it away 10 years ago to the kids, and she kept referring to stuff like, I want to make sure they get my house and stuff like that. And I kept reminding her, it's already theirs.
Yes.
As of 10 years ago.
Yes.
Well, I want to make sure I give them the rest of it. It's like there's nothing for you to give. They own it.
Yeah.
So I think people get mistaken if they give it away but reserve a life estate. It's still theirs. It's not.
Yeah.
Ownership is you have deeded it to the remainderment. There's
Yes.
a deed that says from me to them.
Right.
But somewhere in the conveyance clause it'll say but hereby reserve a life estate for myself and my
Right.
wife. So you don't own it anymore. You just have the present possessory interest.
Yes.
Which can't really be defeated, but it's not title ownership.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and so it's an interesting concept. It's got a long history. The life
Mm-hmm.
estate. It's been around, centuries, I would say. But
We run into it quite often.
and you see them quite often.
Yeah.
You see them quite often. That's right.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, the big misunderstanding I see people run into is they think if the property gets sold, they're just SOL because they have a life estate. But that's not the case. The whole thing is designed for you to live there for the rest of your life, so it has to ignore future owners.
Yes.
They must. It's kind of like an easement that runs with the land. You're stuck with the easement when you buy the property.
Yes.
So now, when your kids want to sell the property, that's something that's going to greatly affect the sale prices that mom and dad are living there for the rest of their life, and we don't know how long that's going to be.
Yeah.
So when you want to say, okay, I want to buy this piece of property, if I have plans for it, and I got people living there, that comes with it. So that's going to greatly affect the sale price.
Yeah, and that's where I run into it.
Yeah.
In circumstances like that.
How do we price that? I don't know.
Yeah. How do you price it?
Depends. If you got a future interest in the thing and that doesn't really bother you, not a problem. But if you're wanting to move in and stuff like that, and can't because of that,
Yeah.
it's kind of like a lifetime renter. I mean, they have quiet enjoyment of the property. You can't tell them what to do.
Sure.
They have the present possessory interest. They can use it and live there and do whatever they want, just like they were, a renter. So, I mean, it works in certain circumstances, but it's not a silver bullet for everything. It's certainly not a silver bullet for long-term care, which I think sometimes people think it might be, but it's not. But
Yeah.
you can extinguish it. But if you extinguish it, you are giving up the ownership you have in it.
That may take a little more clarification because even though I know exactly what you're talking about. I've seen this happen. I'm not sure that everybody completely understands the value that you're talking about with that life estate.
I mean, if you give a life estate and we go to the tables and it shows that you are retaining $40,000. Let's say it's a $100,000 house.
Yeah.
And just for nice, easy numbers, right?
Yeah.
And the life tables say that the life estate is worth 0.4.
Right.
Actually, the thing is out to like 7 digits, if you can imagine that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But say 0.4. So you're retaining a $40,000 value in the house in the life estate. So you have that asset of $40,000 in that real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say you want to terminate that. Let's say you just say, okay, I just want to terminate. I'm expiring the life estate. That's like giving the remainderman that $40,000.
Yes.
They will interpret that as a gift or a
Yes.
divestment. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Or if you just gave it to somebody else.
That's the part that's kind of hard to swallow.
Yeah, it is.
It's kind of hard to swallow that hey, this was our property. We sold it and
Gave it to the kids.
Gave it to the kids or sold it to them. However we did it, we just wanted a life estate as long as we could live here, and you don't realize that right has a value that the state's going to apply to it.
Well, now even if it's a life. If you didn't do that, it's the primary residence, which gets treated a little different.
Yeah.
And we can treat the life estate with a little bit of this primary residence as well.
Right.
But there's a way to avoid all that, and I wasn't going to get into it, but I might as well get into it. And but I've never seen it done. If you go to the TennCare manual, the age blind and disabled manual, and you look under life estates, it says you can and a life estate a life estate is considered a countable asset. However, there's a couple of things that can make it a non-countable asset. You know, you hear me talk all the time about taking countable assets and turning them into non-countable assets. That's how we save property.
Yes.
Now there's like 4 of them. The first 3 they're very technical, but the fourth one, not so much, and that is in the deed that creates the life estate. When you do it in the first place, if you have language that the owner of a life estate cannot sell it, it's a non-countable asset. In other words, if you make the creation of the life estate pretty much irrevocable and unassignable, once you make it, you can't sell it to anybody. You can't terminate it. It's yours. Okay. And again, when you think about TennCare, they try to monetize everything. They're trying to put a value on everything. You said, that's kind of hard to swallow that we have this life estate and they're putting value on it. That's exactly what they're doing. They're putting value on it.
They're putting value on it.
And they will always let you deal with asset if you create a situation where you can't get at it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Okay. I see what
so, I mean, you could have, a lot of times we buy these annuities. Yeah. Medicaid compliant annuities. And when I say Medicaid compliant annuity, I mean, that means there's certain things that make it Medicaid compliant, right? Yeah. And one of the Medicaid compliant things, the first one right off the bat is you can buy, they say under our Deficit Reduction Act, if you want to move some money and make it non-countable, you can buy this Medicaid compliant and you can retain money or gift money away and then buy this annuity. But the annuity has to be irrevocable and unassignable. And what they mean by that is once you do it, you can't change it. Why would they do that? Here's why. You buy this annuity, and sometimes it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? You buy this annuity, you apply for TennCare, because this is what will make you eligible. Yes. You apply for TennCare, they approve. Yes. What they don't want is now after approval, you go cash out the annuity or assign it to your kid or something like that. Now you have the money. Yes. They're saying, we'll let you do this, but when you part with this, you part with it permanently. Okay. And then we can do it, and then we'll do it. That's part of the Medicaid compliancy of it. And so same thing here. If you take the life estate and you say, I can never sell it, I can never transfer it, so it's really irrevocable and unassignable, right? Then we'll consider it a non-countable asset. Because otherwise you have this value, and you could sell it and have the value, right? I mean, it's hard to sell in my opinion, but that's kind of the concept. And when you deal with TennCare, it's always that basic, overwhelming concept. How TennCare's concern is, okay, how can you get at this money and kind of screw us and not use it for your cost of care? Yes. And so they will create certain situations that you can do this as long as we're assured that it's no longer available to you. You're giving it up. Yeah. So and that's okay. We can use that. That still works in our favor because the applicant can't own property. Yeah. So the next best thing is to keep it with his family, children or spouse, right? Right. And it stays with the family. And that we can do. So we don't want the applicant to own property because if he, by very definition, if he has any property, he's not eligible. So anyway, so the life estate is pretty confusing.
Yeah, it is.
It's had a long history just a long history. It's been around forever. And so it gets confusing. Not so much when you use it as a life estate, but when you start dealing with this long-term care, which is relatively recent in history, I guess. 59 years now, I guess Medicaid's been in effect.
Oh, really?
Yeah. 59 years back July the 30th.
Wow, okay.
In 1965, July the 30th, 1965, the Medicaid Act was signed into existence. So
interesting. 6
decades later, we still don't understand how it works. Nobody still understands how it works. That's not likely to get any better. It's getting to the point now where so many people have an understanding of what it works that seems to be the norm. I mean, it's not how it works, but that's the norm. Yeah. It's kind of like during an election. If you say something enough times, eventually it'll be believed. Yeah, it doesn't matter whether it's truth or not. It'll be believed if you hear it enough times.
That seems to be the case.
So if they bombard the commercials, and every time you open up a YouTube, you got to sustain 5 to 9 seconds of something, it becomes a psychological thing. So, but anyway,
one of the best lines. It was a Seinfeld. You remember watching Seinfeld?
Yeah,
George.
Like a long time ago.
George was always just George, but he said he was notorious for just making up something about his career, about himself, or whatever. And he looked at Jerry and told him, said, "It's not a lie if you believe it."
I like that.
So there you go.
And I probably shouldn't get into this, but if you're into your scriptures,
Yes.
isn't it true that it comes from God Himself that all men are liars, but my word is truth.
That's absolutely so.
We're incapable.
Absolutely
We're incapable of telling the truth, at least all the time.
Yeah.
And that comes from the Creator, and He made us, so He knows.
Yes, that's right.
But yeah. All right, so that's the life estate. I don't want to muck it up anymore, but I mean, it's a tool we can use sometimes.
Yeah.
But like any other tool, if it's not used right, it can be a problem.
Yeah.
But usually, as a problem, there's some level of fixing it.
Right.
It's not, when we deal with TennCare, it's kind of like whatever you get into, you can kind of get out of. Most of the time, kind of like pneumonia. You get it, you can get out of it.
Yeah.
But sometimes we get ourselves in a position where it's very hard to get out of it. But if the resources are there, we can do it. So anyway, what questions do you have?
I have all kinds of questions. You mentioned what is it? The
Medicaid compliant annuity.
Annuity. Medicaid. So, and of course, it's irrevocable. I guess it's not
Irrevocable and unassignable.
Unassignable. That kind of thing. We've talked about that, and of course, and you probably know why I'm asking this. But anyway, so what if you're the person you're in the nursing home and that's taking care of it, but then you pass, and there's still dollars left there. What happens to that?
Well, let me just give some background
Okay.
for the listeners to fill in the gap.
Yes.
I've talked about it before, but this is a good time to maybe hit it. Just take a second. If you're in care, one of the tools we can use, if you're a single person, now you hear me talk all the time that married rules are different than single, but
Right.
if you're a single person, our Deficit Reduction Act that we adopted in 2006 it says you can do this. You can give away a portion of money. So let's just say you have a nice even $100,000. Always use that on the radio because it's an easy number to do.
Easy
right?
number.
You got $100,000. You can gift away a portion of it.
Right.
Now that portion, let's say, is 60%. In the old days, they used to call this theory a half a loaf, but it's usually more than a half. So
Okay.
you can give away 60%, right? So in this case, you'd give away $60,000 and give it to your kid, right?
Right.
We don't have a spouse because I remember we said we were single. So we can give it to a child or children. So you give that away. Well, what happens, what do they say all the time? When you give something away, what happens? Well, it triggers a penalty period, right?
Yes.
And penalty period is a time where you have to pay privately.
Yes.
And we know it's going to be within the 5 years because we're already in the home and we're probably going to apply within a week or just days. So it's certainly within the 60-month look back
Sounds
period.
familiar.
So when we give this away, we know we trigger a penalty period.
Right.
And the Deficit Reduction Act says you can gift this away and you can retain the other portion and purchase a Medicaid-compliant annuity that is designed to pay for your care for the length of the penalty period that was created when we gave away the 60%.
Yes.
Okay? Now, it says you can do that. So right off the bat, the end result is we're saving 60% of the $100,000 versus just paying the bill till the $100,000 is gone.
Right.
Which is about 10 months. Okay.
Right.
At almost $10,000 a month. So, it's a big win. We can save 60% of it. Now, the loss is we have to do some private paying, and that's what. Now, so it says you can do it if you buy a Medicaid compliant annuity to do it with.
Okay.
So, Medicaid, annuity is a stream of income, and what we call it a SPIA, SPIA, because it stands for a single premium immediate annuity. So, in other words, if this annuity is going to be $40,000, it's a single premium. The one-time premium is $40,000. And it's immediate. So if we buy it now in August, it'll start paying in September, right away. And that's what it's designed to do. So we purchase it. Now, Medicaid compliant means this. One, it has to be irrevocable and unassignable for what I said before. You can't buy the annuity, get eligible, and then go cash it out. Now you got the $40,000 to do whatever you want with.
Right.
You have to part with it. And so once you do it, you have to go through with the annuity. Okay. Now I'm going to get to your question.
Okay.
The other Medicaid compliant issues are it has to be actuarially sound, which means if you're 95 years old, we can't go buying a 40-year annuity. Okay.
Yes.
Actuarially sound means we go to your age, we look up the table. Social Security tables have already decided how long you're going to live, right?
Yeah.
Or at least statistically, or
Yes.
what we call actuarially.
Yeah.
And so the annuity can't exceed that. Now, that was an issue last year when I had a 97-year-old in care, and it was a 32-month life expectancy if you go to the tables. And our annuity was a little more than that. So we have to cap it at 32 months. We cannot exceed that. So, but that really only happens when you get way up there because these annuities are relatively short.
Yeah.
Okay. And now, and it also has to be equal payments every month. You can't do $10 a month and then a giant balloon payment at the end kind of thing.
Okay.
And so those are the basic Medicaid compliant stipulations. If you do all that, we're allowed to do exactly what we explained. So now here's what happens. We file the application because now that the person is eligible. So let's say this $100,000 we're talking about was over-resourcing them. Mm-hmm. You know, allowed to have two. Let's say we have 102,000. They get to keep two. So we got 100,000 too many.
Right.
Now we've gotten rid of the whole 100,000.
Yes.
How? Well, one, we either gave it away or bought the annuity with it.
Right.
Right. So now the person is only got $2,000 left so we're ready to apply. They're now eligible. We have accelerated eligibility by buying this thing.
Yes.
So there's an order. So we don't have to file a 10-year application until they're eligible. Right.
Right.
Under no circumstances one leave my office until we are 200% eligible. And so we make the gift, we buy the annuity, we file the application.
Yeah.
Because now we have nothing left. We either given it away or bought the annuity with it.
Right.
And so we make the application. So now let's say they make the application. A couple months go by, they come back and say, "Okay, you're approved. You're approved. So we'll pay the bill." Right. Now, but there's going to be this penalty period of 6 months. Let's say that you triggered when you gave this gift. We say, "Okay, we know that's coming because that's part of what the strategy is all about." And so we have this annuity that pays us, and we turn around, and the annuity is designed that coupled with your income pays the bill for that penalty period for 6 months.
Okay.
And it expires at 6 months. Now, at the end of 6 months, we've become eligible, or what we call otherwise eligible, but for the penalty. So TennCare approved us and said, you're otherwise eligible but for this penalty, which means as soon as the penalty runs out, we'll start paying.
Yes.
We don't have to reapply or anything like that.
Correct.
You are eligible right now, quote, but for the penalty, meaning if it wasn't for the penalty, you'd be eligible.
Yes.
And that's sort of like the key words that kind of let us do what we did. And so we go merrily along. Now, so at the end of the theory is if it runs its course, we have to private pay the penalty period. We've saved the $60,000 by giving it to our child.
Yes.
At the end of the penalty period, TennCare picks up the bill. Of course, they always get your income, and then they pay the balance forevermore for as long as you're going to be in care, right? So now, let's say I go to your question and say, what happens if you have an annuity? Because sometimes every now and then, if we have a whole lot of money we're dealing with, it can be up to 18 to 24 months, okay, these penalties. Yeah. So you have this annuity and the person passes away. Let's say it's a 12-month annuity and the person passes away after 6 months.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens.
Yeah.
It happens kind of often. And so now that's a great question because we're in pretty good position for that. Okay. The reason we're in good position for that is we are literally private paying for this penalty period, right? Yes. Which means if you pass away after 6 months, TennCare, we've never racked up a TennCare bill yet. Now, on the annuity, we have to make the primary beneficiary, the state of Tennessee, the Bureau of TennCare, right? Mm-hmm. And then we make maybe the child or something the secondary beneficiary. Mm-hmm. Now, when that person passes away, TennCare's not paid a dime for this person's care because we are private paying with the annuity.
Right.
And we're only halfway through it. So when that person passes away, we notify TennCare and say, hey, you are primary beneficiary on this annuity, but you shouldn't have a claim because you've never done anything for us. And so they will issue paperwork and say, you're right, we release this, we don't have it. Now it goes, so everything gets paid to the secondary beneficiary, which is the child. And now the annuity usually allows you to take a commuted lump sum, but there's usually a fee for that, or just continue taking the monthly payments. Oh, okay. But that goes to the heir.
Okay.
So it never goes to TennCare, and it never goes. I mean, there could be. The only time I ever saw some of it go to TennCare is if somebody was in care years ago and then came out of it and had racked up a bill then, and we do something now later, and they had a claim on the estate. But 99% of the time, there's no TennCare claim on the estate because TennCare has not started paying yet. Now, TennCare only gets paid back what they pay out.
That's right.
And they haven't done anything yet.
Right.
So even though they're named number one beneficiary, that was the other Medicaid compliant thing. The last one is that you got to name them the primary beneficiary, so that there's a payback version if they're out anything.
Yeah.
Okay. But I've never seen that happen yet. So somebody passes away 6 months in a 12-month annuity. We just could jump through hoops and get TennCare to file their release, and they will.
Yeah.
And when you get the release, now we go to the insurance company and say, this is the beneficiary. This is the next one up. They'll want to know, do you want a lump sum?
Yeah.
Which, like anytime you take a lump sum, it's less than the whole amount.
Yeah,
It's kind of healthy, too. So I usually tell folks, just take the payments.
Yeah.
But whatever. So they elect to do one or the other, and they change. Now they make these payments to that person versus the other one. Stuff
Interesting.
Like that. So you get. So now the situation there would have saved $60,000 that you gifted away.
Yeah.
And you kept 40 for the annuity. Let's just say you're halfway through it when you pass away. That's another $20,000 that goes to the heir.
Yeah.
So you actually, in the whole scenario there, I'm not saying it's an advantage for the person to pass away early. I'm saying if it happens, which is a higher percentage than you think, when it happens, that's more that goes to the heir. So now that heir's up to $80,000 out of $100,000, right? So it is a very valid strategy. It's not used much. People haven't heard of it. When I talk about that, people just look at me and say, I've never heard of such a thing.
Yeah.
And that's probably true. I get it. You haven't.
Yeah. Well,
but it's there.
Well, when you first try to grasp all this, it seems very complicated. Of course, I've had the benefit of having several weeks with you now and listening to how this works, so I kind of understand.
Actually, more than a year.
It's been more than a year, hasn't it? It's been great.
And it does sink in, but I mean, and that one's pretty number heavy. Okay, it just is numbers.
Yeah.
But it works. I mean, it's a slam dunk to work.
Yeah.
Now, what's the pros? The pros are we get to save this percentage we can give away. The cons are there's going to be some loss. I tell people when you're single, unless you've done one of my asset protection trusts years ago, there's going to be some loss, and it usually hovers around the 30% quasi 1/3 area. It can sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, but there is going to be some loss. But the good news is it's better than doing nothing.
Yeah. Well,
now, if you do nothing, you're paying the bill until you're just out, until you're just indigent. It's like, okay, I'm paying the bill. The day comes when you say, I just cannot pay anymore. The well is dry.
Yeah.
And so now you can be qualified for TennCare because of the same thing. You've been exhausted of everything you own, but nothing's been saved. Whereas back here, we can save what they call this half a loaf. We can save this 60%. Yeah. And accelerate our becoming indigent, because what we've done is we've given away or bought the annuity, and now we don't have anything left, and now that's what makes us eligible. But we've done that by saving this large percentage of this money. Now that's certainly better than nothing. Way better than nothing. Way better than nothing.
I've run into several times over the year of talking with you where people have come in and said, well, we're in this circumstance and. And of course they say it, and we know what they mean. The nursing home is going to get everything. Well, the nursing home doesn't get it, but TennCare gets it. The nursing home gets paid, but
the nursing home gets it through payment.
But in our mind, that's what people think, that we're already in this circumstance, and there's nothing we can do, and this is going to be eaten up.
Now, that is a way. I'm not saying that's wrong.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's a very good way.
Yeah.
Because you can see, why. The overwhelming thought people have is, I've worked all my life. I have these assets, whatever that is, whatever your wealth is. Now, wealth is a term that means what you own. Right. I mean, it could be a lot. It could be not so much. It could be, it's whatever you've done for all your life and created. Yeah. But the real important thing is your wealth is yours. You got your sweat equity in, or you and your spouse. I mean, you have worked and labored for it like any other red-blooded American that, puts his, heart and soul into doing what they do. Mm-hmm. And now it's theirs, and they want to protect it. So why, when there's a way to protect a lot of it, when you're married, we can protect it all. When you're single, in some circumstances we can protect it all, but for the most part, we can protect a bunch of it. Okay? Right. So, we talked about a disabled child and stuff like that. That's a way to protect it all if you have that to work with and stuff. But basically, there's always going to be, usually when you're single, there's nobody left for you to give it to that doesn't trigger a penalty. Yeah. When you're married, you can give it to your spouse. You can give. And remember, I tell everybody, if you ever hear the word give away or don't get paid for it, it's a red flag. We got to worry about that.
Yeah.
Well, you can give to a spouse, no penalty. You can
Yes.
give to a disabled child, no penalty.
Yes.
A couple other very specific things, but nonetheless, but usually when somebody's single, there's nobody left to give it to that will not trigger the penalty, and that's where the loss comes in.
Right.
And so, but these are things you can do. I mean, why just keep spending it until it's gone? Now, I know you're told to do that, typically by the facilities, and there's certainly, I've never been able to ascertain any evil intent in that. They just think that's the way it's done.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I think we started off the hour with, in a way, was that, you've been hearing all your life that this is how it works.
Right.
It's not all true.
Yeah.
Or let me put it this way: I'm not saying that it doesn't work that way. It does work that way. It just has the end result of you're broke.
Yeah.
It's a way. I don't think it's a very good way. I would never recommend it when there's ways to save this property.
That's
You know what
exactly
I mean?
right.
So I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just not a good one. But it's the one everybody thinks is the only thing out there.
Yeah.
And there's not. There are other options, and every tub rests on its own bottom, and so cases are all different.
They all
I mean, we have done some of these Medicaid compliant annuities or spousal Medicaid compliant annuities for huge amounts of money, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And they work like a champ, especially the spousal ones. You
Yes.
save everything. You're just giving it to the spouse.
Yeah.
And you're doing it with annuity over time. So what we take a countable asset and turn it into a non-countable stream of income. That's
Right.
kind of what we're doing. And the only thing that's under the statute that we have to qualify is countable assets. Well, we've just taken this entire countable asset and turned it into something else. So it's off the table.
Right.
We get to keep it.
Right.
And it's not in the calculations of eligibility. So, do people who have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in property and land qualify for TennCare? Every day. You just have to become eligible. The eligibility process is the changing around this stuff. As a matter of fact, you hear people talk about the term spend down. I think I probably talked about this before, but you hear people say the spend down, or the facility will say spend down.
Right.
Now, when you say that word, you immediately get a street vernacular understanding of what it is. And you think
Yeah.
you just got to go get rid of your money and dump it and spend it and do stuff like that.
Right.
That is not what it means. Okay.
Okay.
You hear me talk about countable assets being a category,
Right.
and there's other categories. There's non-countable category. There's
Right.
exempt. There's excluded. There's inaccessible. There's all kind of other categories. The word spend down is a legal term.
Okay.
It's directly in the TennCare Act and everybody else's states act that says spend down is a recategorization of the property. It doesn't mean spend it. It doesn't mean go out and spend all your money. It means recategorize it.
Okay.
So the TennCare Act fully knows and understands and acknowledges all the stuff that we do. It's just that people don't know it's out there. And there's nobody to advise them that it's out there.
Yeah.
I mean, I do this work, but I have people that come to me to do this work from very far away.
Yeah.
So I don't know why it's not out there, but with other attorneys and stuff, but apparently it's not. So.
Well, you've done a good job of getting the word out, at least in this area.
Try to,
and
yeah.
Not only from here, but the other show that you do, and your seminars, which you might want to reiterate
Yeah.
again. Just talk about. We got about 5 minutes.
Yeah, but I want to say this about this station is we went I don't know about a year ago past June went to talk radio.
Yeah.
I get a lot of people that come into the office. I hear you on the radio.
Yeah.
And if I ask which one, I often hear them say, they'll either say WDXE or they'll say every Friday morning,
Every
or
Friday
something,
morning. Yeah.
or Lawrenceburg or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I get a lot of folks. So you have people are out there listening, which is great.
I happen to know too. I mean, I of course I get comments not only on your program but others that we do during the week, and they're all good, positive comments. So we appreciate that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's working. We're it's hard to put a dent in everything sometimes, but I mean, I do that. I do that Nashville show, and we do the seminar. So we get the word out as best we can. But I mean, there's a lot of folks out there that maybe just don't hear it. I'm sure what else to do, but I try.
Well, what's happened is, I mean, over the years, people share their experiences, and a lot of them have had bad experiences.
Yeah.
Because they didn't know what to do or didn't prepare for it in time.
Exactly.
That kind of thing, and then of course they're hogtied or crushed at the end of all of this, and they tell those experiences. And people base their opinion on how it works based on those negative experiences.
Right. And also, people now we've got the word of mouth happening.
Yes.
And I've even got people that work at the nursing homes referring people to us.
Yeah.
So it's getting around that way. So as we wrap up here, let me just go back to we do the seminars from time to time. We kind of are
Absolutely.
doing them a little less often, but the next one coming up is September the 14th. That's 2 weeks from tomorrow, I guess.
Yes.
And it's going to be in Pulaski, and it's a
Yes.
Saturday seminar. And Saturday seminars are always at 10 o'clock in the morning. You try to start just as right on time as we can. But that's going to be at the American Legion over there. They have
Yes.
invited us over there. It's a new venue for us, but my understanding is pretty big. I've been there before. It's pretty large.
Oh, it'll be
Get
plenty
some
of room.
tables and chairs and stuff like that. So it's September 14th, 10 o'clock at the American Legion. We call the seminar Wills, Trust, in the Nursing Home. So give us a call at my office and get RSVP'd for that. The number is 931-363-7222. Next one we're having is November the 2nd. That's going to be up in Franklin for some of our northern listeners.
Oh, really?
We're doing that at a place called 501 Suites, which is on, I think it's 416 Mary Lindsay Polk Drive in Franklin. I'll hit on that a little more after we clear this one and come up on the other one. But I have some folks that listen up there that have trouble driving all the way down here.
Yeah.
But if you haven't come to a live seminar, invest the hour. It's worth it. I get a lot of great reviews. It's worth it. And of course, we do this show every Friday morning from 8 to 9, and it's a call-in show. And I know a lot of people sometimes are reluctant to call in because they feel like their question is like silly, or people say, this is a stupid question. I'm very understanding of that.
Sure.
You will not ever hear me say something like that. And if you don't know something, you don't know it. If you don't ask the question about it, we want to learn about it.
Right.
So, if you don't know something, how can it be a dumb question just because you don't know it?
There's a lot of things I don't know, Stan.
If they're dumb questions, then I ask them all day long. So.
Well, we would certainly highly recommend getting to the seminar, September the 14th, the American Legion in Pulaski, Tennessee. Stan's phone number at the office?
931-363-7222. Or you can go to my website, estateplanstan.com, and that'll get you to the calendar, the phone number, the email. You can ask your question that way.
That's right. Every Friday here, 8 to 9 o'clock, we look forward to visiting with Stan Pierchoski, Pierchoski Estate Law, located on the square there in Pulaski, right next to the Star Theater.
Yep. And work up a question maybe for next Friday and call in and ask.
That sounds good.
I invite it.
That sounds good. We appreciate you being here. And good Lord willing, we'll see you next Friday.
Always a pleasure, Jeff.
All right, man.
Dean Lawrenceburg, Broadcast Services of Prospect Communications.
Explaining Kamala Harris. I'm Therese Crowley, Fox News.